Okay, Packet people, welcome to the channel once again. Now, on this video, I actually have a special guest that I'm going to be interviewing, and that is Mr. Gerald Combs. He's from the Wireshark Foundation, and if you haven't heard of him, where have you been? Because the guy's kind of a big deal around the Wireshark community. So it's a super honor to have him here with me, and also to get some news and tidbits about what's coming for the Wireshark project. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce Mr. Gerald Combs. How you doing, Gerald?
Doing great, Chris. Great seeing you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. I think the last time we hung out was I think Kansas City Sharkfest, right? Kansas City was is Sharkfest United States was actually held in Kansas City, and that is your hometown, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. That's where Wireshark sort of came from. Yeah, it kind of started years ago. I attended UMKC, University of Missouri at Kansas City, and at some point I started working there as well. And I got a job at the commuting services department, and part of that job was to help troubleshoot the network. And so they handed me this box, which it was a literal box. It was this compact, huge, heavy piece of equipment, but it was called a sniffer, and it had this special software that let you analyze networks and some special network interfaces that let you do capture. And it was a pretty fancy piece of equipment at the time, but that's what got me started in protocol analysis and network analysis. And after that, I went to work for an ISP, and we didn't have the budget for a sniffer. And so, when it came time to troubleshoot the network, you had tools like TCP dump, and TCP dump is great, and I still use it all the time, but it's not particularly interactive. And I was looking for that sort of browsability and interactivity that Sniffer gave you. And so I, did the kind of dumb thing of thinking, well, I can write my own. And so I started doing that. That was kind of the life-changing thing. The joke is that it was a weekend project that got way out of hand, but that's kind of how it unfolded. I got some very minimal initial code working, and something that was useful in my day-to-day job, and I released that as open source to the public. And I think the very next day I started getting contributions from people, and that has not stopped. And so my job went from kind of working at this ISP and helping to manage the systems and network there, to having this other job of trying to keep up with all these talented developers, and that kept sending all the this code and all these new features and all this great stuff my way. And so yeah, ever since then I've had the pleasure of working with a really great and talented and wonderful community, and both developers and users, and now educators, and it's just been a life-changing event.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, from the community, from the user community, I know myself, many of the people who are watching this video really appreciate all the work that you and other developers have put into this tool, because I know many of us just live and die by this thing. I mean, it's our go-to product to help us to resolve issues or investigate incidents. So really appreciate all the work you've done to put into the project. So I understand that there's some big news coming up for Wireshark. So what can you tell us?
Well, we have a major release that should be out by the time this recording is released. I'm getting the final preparations done, and getting it ready to go out the door. The next release is going to be Wireshark 4.0, and there are a bunch of changes. I think the main takeaway from this talk is that if you use Wireshark in any amount of regularity, you should look at the 4.0 release notes, because there's going to be something in there that will affect you. Hopefully it'll make your life easier or more productive, or make your troubleshooting time a bit reduced. But yeah, there are just all these little changes, and sometimes big changes that are going to affect how people use Wireshark from here on out.
Okay, wow, no kidding. 4.0. I mean, that sounds big, and it's great to hear that it is big. I actually have it up. I've got a development release right now, but as you mentioned, when this goes live, it'll probably get moved into the other bucket. But definitely excited to start learning some of the new features with for my own troubleshooting methodology too. So what can you tell us? Like, what are some of the new things that people should look out for?
Well, the big major change is that there have been a lot of enhancements made to the display filter engine. One of our developers, Joao, did a really good job of just going through all the the display filter code and making sure that it's all consistent, and then adding in features that needed to be, that would make life users better. For instance, one of the big things that we've gotten questions on over the years is the fact that you type in a display filter and it matches, you type in these little fields, right, like ip.header or tcp.port, so on. Sometimes those show up in a packet more than once, and so, for instance, if you have tunneled IPv4, IP and IP and IP and so on, the question is, how do you match, say, that outer IP packet versus the inner packet, or the one that's kind of buried 10 layers deep if you're tunneling it that far. So we now have a layer operator. So you can say, TCP.port number one equals blah, 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 and it'll be the outer layer TCP.port, or TCP.port number two will be kind of the next layer down, and so on. And it'll let you match a specific occurrence of that port or that address or whatever other field that you want to match.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I can think of the number of times that's happened to me too. You set a filter and you end up getting the wrong packets you expect.
As I said, for IP and TCP, this will be helpful with tunneling, but there are other protocols that just have repeated fields. One that comes to mind is ASN1. You might have repeated fields of just ASN1 tag, or this tag is this value, this other tag is this value, and so on. And if you really needed to, you could match a specific occurrence of that. Although, having said that out loud, I don't know how useful that would be, but somebody might find it useful.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, that does. And will that impact, for example, how I know sometimes when I set filters and I get more than the expected number of things, like, so for example, if I'm filtering for a TTL or whatever, like sometimes like a packet that's, or information that's held within like an ICMP frame, sometimes you'll see more than one instance. So I'm assuming it'll help me in those ways too.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, one of the examples I gave at a recent talk was that you have IPv4 tunneled over IPv4 using GRE. That was the protocol, and then inside that there was an ICMP packet with a response that contained another ICMP header, or I'm sorry, an IPv4 header, and so you can use the layer operator to just pick out specific occurrences of any of those addresses that you wanted to.
Well, good. So display filtering with the new layer operator. So any other features people should really be on the watch for?
Yeah, like I said, there are a bunch of changes made to the display filter code. You can now match any versus all, going back to multiple occurrences. You can say, okay, I just want to match against just one of these instances of my IP address or my TCP port or whatever, or I can match against all of them and say, okay, I want all my TCP ports to be 80, which again, maybe not useful, but I don't know your network. One thing that kind of stuck out at me was Joao added the ability to do arithmetic. You can do math on any field that has a number. For instance, you can you can add and subtract and divide and multiply and so on. But you can also use what's called the modulo operator. If you're not familiar with that, that gives you the integer remainder of something like 15 modulo 10 is 5. And yeah, I think to me that stuck out because as a software developer, I use the modulo operator all the time, and for doing various bits of math. And I could see where it might be useful in some cases. Like, for instance, suppose your company has a standard where all your web servers listen on a port that ends in 443, whether it's just plain 443 or 8443 or 12443 or so on. And you want to match that traffic. You can say, your TCP.port modulo 1000 equals 443, and that modulo operator will just lop off, that the 1000 or above portion of that, and just give you the 443 remainder. You can match against that. Again, this is a contrived example, but this is one of the cool features where I look at this and I think, okay, somebody's going to apply this to their really weird corner case in their environment and just go to town on it. So this is I think a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, sure. And I could think DNS too might have that because I know some people just add an extra number in front of 53 and
Yeah. Or a big thing is SSH servers, because a really popular thing is to run your SSH server on a port that's not 22, just because that's the one that everybody um, you know tries to you know tries to hit. They just try to brute force it and see what they if they can break into your system. But if you have it running off on a different port, you can maybe use math to match against that. You can something that we probably should have added a long time ago, but you can match against UTC dates and times. So you can match, um, previous to this, I guess, the days and times were local, but now you can specify, okay, I want UTC. And another kind of miscellaneous thing is you can, and when you're matching for text, you can specify a Unicode code point. Before you just kind of either had to type in the actual hex values for the character itself or whatever, or just kind of paste in the character however you could. But now you can match against the actual code point number if you know that. The example I always use is uh, code point 1F489, which is the pile of poo, which is everyone's favorite. But you can match against that.
oh wow, we can now filter on a pile of poo. Thanks, Gerald.
Um, it's the joy that I like to bring to the world.
Hey, good job. I'm sure that'll be useful to millions. So good. So what else can you tell us?
Um, One of the big features, conversations and endpoints, those dialogues have been redone. All the controls are on the left now, so that should make them a little bit easier to navigate. And the cool thing is you can, I don't know if you're familiar with or for the people watching who might not be familiar with it, if you bring up the conversations list, it'll show you conversations not only at the TCP layer, but at the IP layer and UDP and IPv4, V6 and Ethernet and so on. You can now and that's displayed as a set of tabs in that window. You can now tear those tabs off. So if you want to look at your TCP conversations next to IPv6, for example, you can do that, which I think is going to be pretty useful. And there are all sorts of other little updates that have been made to those dialogues. And Roland Canal was the developer who made those changes, and I think he did a really good job.
I just want to shout out Roland right now. Thank you, Roland. Here's why, because you mentioned it, but I know in the courses that I teach and some of the demonstrations that I do, especially in those two dialogues, and I'm going to be displaying those for the people watching, but those radio buttons at the bottom, I can't tell you the number of times I've said, okay, let's go ahead and go into conversations. Now come down to here and go ahead and click the button limit to display filter. And the number of times you go, whoa, or yeah, I didn't know it did that, or I think I haven't looked at it just yet, but the GeoIP mapping feature to have that, just to have that more visible, to where your eye's going to catch it. I think that's going to be a nice feature for a lot of people.
Yeah. 2 points from what you were just talking about. First off, we have gotten to a lot of great links in Wireshark to make it discoverable. And by that, I mean, if you say right click on any part of the UI, you're going to get this menu that lets you drill down further and go further and kind of either filter the traffic a little bit better or, try to give you the thing that you're looking for, that you're trying to drill down and find. And so, that's, if you're new to Wireshark, I think the quickest way to learn it, without, say sitting through Chris's class, but is just to right click on stuff and pull up the packet capture. You're not going to break anything. Just start right clicking on stuff and see what stuff does. And I think that's probably a pretty good way to actually learn how the program works and what it can do, along, of course, with instruction like you provide.
I agree that when you say that, just click around. I think there's many features that I've found just almost on accident, right clicking and trying something out and going, whoa, that's a great way to do it. Or being at Sharkfest and looking over someone's shoulder or watching another presenter and they'll go to a certain field and right click something. I go, whoa, that could have saved me 20 minutes every time I do that. So yeah, so that's a good suggestion.
So
So
And we also like, for instance, the about dialog, we try to shove stuff in there that we might find useful. For instance, there's a folders tab that shows you where Wireshark stores all of its configuration files. And so where where that sort of thing is kept. There's also a keyboard shortcut tab. So you can, if you're bored one day, just look through the keyboard shortcuts and figure out what they are. They're just little things like that peppered all over the user interface that we've kind of added to try to make people's jobs easier.
so good. So in addition to the filtering, we talked a little bit about the endpoints and configure or conversations dialog. There's been some new features there. So what other things jump out at you or that you'd like to share?
You mentioned GeoIP mapping. That's faster. There was a bug where if you use GeoIP mapping, there's a company called MaxMine that produces these IP2 whatever databases. Usually people use them for IP geolocation, but you can also map IP addresses to ASN number, ASNs, or even, I think they sell databases that will let you map an IP address to its connection speed, things like that. And we've had that support for that in Wireshark for a long time. And I kind of embarrassed to say I added the code for that and I added it wrong and it was slow. And so Thomas, one of our developers, found the bug, and now it's faster. So at Wireshark 4.0, if you have IP geolocation enabled, it will be faster than it is in earlier versions. So thankfully, the bug has been fixed.
Great job, and thanks, Thomas, for finding that bug. And for anybody out there that doesn't yet have the GeoIP features or know what we're talking about here, how you can basically place, you can find a geolocation of an IP address right up here. I'll go ahead and link a video, and that will bring you to. There's a tutorial that I did about how to set all that up in Wireshark. So then you'll be able to see what Gerald's talking about. Great, Gerald. What else? What else we got coming?
We have a change that's going to affect probably you because and other instructors. The default main window layout has changed. This is a really minor, easy change, but it is going to affect. If you're trying to teach someone how to use Wireshark remotely, you can no longer assume that the layout's just going to be the three windows on top of each other. The layout has changed so that the packet list is at the top. The packet details are on the left, and the packet, the byte view that is on the right. And this is the layout that I noticed a lot of people use. I see that on your screen right there. It's on my screen here. And it's just kind of the first thing people change when they install Wireshark. They go, oh, no, I don't want it like that. I want it, to have this layout. And so we've kind of caught up with the user community and changed the default layout to be what everybody uses.
Thanks for mentioning that, because it's funny that you say that, because I'm so used to having that layout that I didn't even notice that was default when I downloaded 4.0, because I have it right over here. I'm like, wait, you're right, it is that layout. So that's great, because in the first lesson of the Wireshark course that I have here in YouTube, that's like one of the first things that people do is they show them how to go up there, go to preferences, go to layout, do the second one over, and then I know for me it's just I've always liked it because it's a better use of that white space. Because your detail view, you'd always have this white space over here on the right, so might as well put the hex view and the ASCII characters over there on the right. So that's
really since I say modern, but it's been the case forever that people have had say 16 by 10 screens. I mean, or some sort of aspect ratio like that versus 4.3, 4:3. Way back when monitors were a lot more, say, narrow than they are nowadays, and now that you have all this real estate on their monitor, I think it makes a lot more sense information-wise to put those two bottom panes next to each other instead of on top of each other, because that just gives you a bigger packet list, and I think it's a more efficient use of space and more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that for sure. So good. So that's going to be the default layout now. So now I can just trim out some of what I do in my intro trainings. So just to save people some time, we're already into the right layout, or the one that I think is pretty useful. So what else?
Let's see. I don't know how many people have to import hex dumps, but there's some gear out there that will generate network traffic for you, but it won't give you the traffic in PCAP form. It'll dump it out as a hex dump, which is kind of passive aggressive, I think. Um, but within Wireshark, we have two ways that you can then convert that into a PCAP. And in the Wireshark user, in the main application, you can go to file and import hex dump. But there's also a command line utility called text to PCAP. And in the past, those two bits of code, those two features have used different bits of code, and they kind of work differently and had, different ways that you had to set them up. And um, Wireshark 4.0 is a lot better in that regard because now the code is all kind of been normalized, and it's all one bit of code now and it has the same features and it works the same way. That's probably a limited. There are a few people watching this that'll find this useful, but I don't know about most people watching this. Another big thing is that we are migrating to Qt 6. The graphical UI, I'm sorry, the user interface library that we use is called Qt or Qt. And it's this software library, and they update it occasionally. And the big thing that the company that makes this has done recently is they come out with a major new release of Qt, and so we've been adapting Wireshark to support it. And this kind of goes beyond just being able to support the latest version of this library, because the newer versions of Qt support things like dark mode on Windows better, and they support these little corner cases in operating systems a lot better as time goes on. And so it's important that we kind of keep up with the different releases of this library. Having said that, one of the things that we don't have yet in Wireshark is good for support for dark mode on Windows. The people who make Qt are still kind of working on that, but support is improving over time, and that's one of the reasons that we support newer versions of that library. Another thing is the support for Windows on ARM64. We don't quite have that support yet, but being able to use the newer versions of Qt will let us make that move a lot more easily.
Good. So we've talked quite a bit about some of those features with 4.0 and some of the big ones that people should be watching for. Sounds like a lot of fun to really sink our shark teeth into. So what can we expect, or what can you share about things that you have on the roadmap?
Well, the two big ones are dark mode on Windows and support for ARM64 on Windows. We've supported ARM64 on Mac OS for a long time, and Linux has just kind of been really stupid, simple, easy. You just recompile Wireshark and it works. But it's been more difficult on Windows, primarily because of the different libraries that we have to support, but also because we need to find an ARM64 builder. We every time somebody checks in a change in Wireshark's code, we automatically build a source code tarball. We build Mac OS installers, and we build Windows installers so that you can go and check test that out. And that's been a really powerful feature of the project for a long time. If somebody reports a bug, if it's a really easy fix, we can say, okay, I fixed it, I checked in the code, and you should be able to download and install it in the next half hour or so. And that's just been really useful over the life of the project. And so integrating an ARM64 builder into that is something that we're going to have to do eventually. Hopefully we'll have that done before the 4.2 release, and we'll start churning out installers for that platform. Let's see. That's one thing that's on the roadmap. Windows Dark Mode has been on the roadmap for a long time. Hopefully we'll get that done. People always surprise me. Somebody always comes up with this great new feature, this cool new thing that they want to add to Wireshark, and so hopefully I'd be willing to bet that there'll be a couple of neat surprises like that for the next release.
Good, and that actually makes me. I wanted to ask you to share with the audience that if someone watching does have an interesting feature that they could suggest, or maybe some other enhancement request, how would they go about getting that to you?
The best way to do that is through our issue tracker, and I'm assuming we can include a URL to that. It's
Yeah.
just gitlab.com Wireshark issues. And if you want to suggest something, you can do that there. If you want to get involved with Wireshark's development, that's the place to do that as well. Let's see. Oh, we need to mention something else. Along with the stuff we're adding and planning to add, we are definitely stopping something, and that is support for 32-bit Windows. Wireshark 4.0 is not going to come with any sort of 32-bit Windows installers. We had a long, sort of public discussion about this, and nobody complained. So, no, but the thing is, newer versions of a lot of libraries, particularly Qt, our user interface library, don't support 32-bit Windows anymore. And most of our developers are 64-bit only. I know I haven't built Wireshark with, a 32-bit version of Wireshark on my local laptop for a long time. And so, it's that platform is just quickly becoming kind of a legacy platform, like it or not. And so, we kind of started the process of phasing that out. And part of that process is that we're not going to have any 4.0 installers for that, or any installers for 32-bit Windows for later releases. If you are using 32-bit Windows, you can still get up-to-date versions of Wireshark, but it will just be on the 3.6 branch. So you won't be able to take advantage of the new features that we talked about today, but you will still get regular updates for your platform.
Very good. Yeah, and they can still download that from the older releases on the Wireshark page.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, good. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to share with us, Gerald?
Well, we have Sharkfest Europe coming up. I'm really excited about that. Are you going to be there?
Yeah, I will be. I'm actually doing the 2-day pre-conference class. That's going to be getting started with Wireshark, and also taking a peek into how to use it for troubleshooting, and also network forensics for cybersecurity. So if anybody's interested in checking that out, definitely invite you to check out the link below, and that'll take you to the registration page for Wireshark Europe. And I'm excited to be able to hang out with you and the other developers there. If you've never been to Sharkfest, either Europe, US, wherever, it's a treat. There's something really exciting to be able to just go and just be able to sit down with someone like Gerald or any of the other developers. They're very welcoming. You get to ask them questions. They spend time with you. I know a lot of the tips and tricks that I've picked up for my consulting practice. I've found it at Sharkfest. It's a unique bunch. So you're definitely, if you have a question that can be asked, someone there at that conference would know the answer. So what do you like about Sharkfest?
Well, I like seeing all the people I work with on a day-to-day basis. Within the core developer group, we kind of joke that, once you attend Sharkfest, you start reading emails and messages in the other developer's voice. I mean, you kind of get it is really helpful, and it really does help with the development of the project, because you kind of get that point of view that you normally wouldn't have, communicating with someone remotely. It is really a joy to be part of this community, because everybody's so great and supportive. One of the comments I heard a long time ago about Sharkfest is that it's one of the few conferences where instructors go to see each other's sessions.
Oh
Usually
yeah.
someone flies in, gives a talk, and leaves. But no, I mean, people show up here, and they're there for the duration, and they want to see what's going on in the community.
I remember that brings me back to, I think it was my second or third Sharkfest, Gerald, when I was presenting, and I think you walked in the room, and I just froze because I thought, oh man, Gerald Combs has just walked in. He's gonna think what I'm saying is so stupid. And then I went up to you afterward, and you had mentioned something specific you liked about it, or something that you learned, and I was just like, what? It helped me realize, like, wow, that's a cool guy, first of all, but also, like, you become the student the second you get off the stage, if you are presenting, and learn from other presenters, or other presenters are there to support and help you, Like they're not there to be like, oh, there's a better way to do that, Chris. They're like, no, it's like I've had several of the core developers in my sessions at Sharkfest, and I'm not intimidated by it anymore because I know that they're my friends and want everything to go well, and just for information to be shared and to help people understand their networks better. Well, I'm excited to see you then. Until then, download Wireshark, download 4.0. It's available. It's out there on the site. Check out these new features that Gerald has talked about today. We really appreciate having you on the channel today, Gerald. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Well, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, go check out Wireshark 4.0 now. If you haven't done so already, get that link to Sharkfest. No matter when you're watching this, there's going to be one coming. Either for Sharkfest Europe is the next one, but also even next year, there's plans for bringing it back to the States, and we'll see what happens then. All right, well, thanks everybody, and thanks again, Gerald, and we'll see you again.